July 13, 1939. World's tallest man gives Vincennes, Indiana a thrill as he stops off in the city with his family to eat lunch. Robert Wadlow, 8 foot 9.5 inches tall, weighs 491 pounds. Robert Wadlow, 21, of Alton, Illinois, who quit playing basketball because he was so tall there was a constant danger of bumping his head on the basket, furnished Vincennes a one-man circus Thursday morning and a short street parade which jammed traffic in the vicinity of 4th and Main Streets. Robert, almost as famous as the quintuplets, and photographed not quite as much, but enough to satisfy the vanity of the greatest publicity seeker, which he is not. Spent almost an hour here shortly before noon Thursday with his parents, Mr. and Mrs. H. F. Wadlow, and 2 sisters. They were returning to their home in Alton after a week's vacation trip in the Northeast and Eastern states, to quench their thirst and eat a light lunch and stretch themselves after a drive here from Bedford. The Wadlow family, minus one son who stayed at home, dropped into the Palace of Suites at 4th and Main Streets. Before they had reached a table in the rear of the palace, a large crowd had gathered, filling the sidewalks, moving into the store, everybody eager to get a look at the world's tallest man. Robert is 21 years old. He has never known what it is to be a normal-sized child like other children. When he was 9 years old, he stood 6.5 feet tall in his stocking feet. He has continued to grow, and today at 21 years of age stands 8 foot 9.5 inches tall and weighs 491 pounds. According to medical science, he is 13 inches taller than the tallest giant in the United States. He wears a number 37 shoe, and his trousers, if utilized upside down, would provide the shelter of a tent for a person on a camping trip. A Sun Commercial representative introduced himself to the Alton giant. He smiled, greeting, and referred the reporter to his father. "He does the talking for me," Robert volunteered. Mr. Wadlow obligingly answered questions. He explained that this was their vacation season, and they had taken a trip up into the northern Michigan, over into the Pennsylvania and New York, and down to Maryland, and were on their way back home. Mr. Wadlow, the father, is an ordinary man, weighing about 160 pounds. Miss Wadlow is also of normal size. The 2 sisters of the giant were buxom young misses, attractive, and apparently not too much pleased with the curiosity their party had attracted. They were anxious to be on their way. Mr. Wadlow explained that Robert had begun growing when a mere tot, and had kept it up, exceeding the growth of other boys in his neighborhood. When other youths gained their maximum height and ceased to grow, Robert kept on growing. He attended school with other boys and learned his 3 R's and other fundamentals in education. He participated in outdoor games with other boys and played basketball. However, his height and his weight provided a handicap, and eventually he dropped out of the game. "Did you ever play football?" Robert was asked. "No," he grinned. "Basketball was as far as I ever got in the higher athletics." For a time, Robert was sensitive about his size, but as he began to develop into a popular model for photographers, he became less and less sensitive and eventually began to utilize in a financial way on the unusual endowment. He has traveled for a shoe company and wears nothing but shoes of that manufacturer, of course, of an extra large size. Seated at the table, his size appeared enormous, but as he began to stretch out to raise to his feet, the full significance of his gigantic height began to manifest itself. It was necessary to turn off the electric fan so that he could walk to the front door without danger of being beheaded by the revolving blades of the fans. He found it necessary to bow way down in order to get under the header of the door. Outside on the streets, he towered high above the curious groups of spectators who gathered around him. He rested on the cane or giant walking stick as he handed out photographs of himself and collected the 2 bits, pin money, which the photographs brought. The automobile in which the family has made its tour is an ordinary sedan, with exception that a 7-passenger length car rather than a 5-passenger was necessary to accommodate the length and bulk of the tall giant. Once inside the car and stretched out comfortably, Robert appeared as any other tourist, attracting little if any attention after moving out of the circle of spectators which had gathered around him to marvel at the world's tallest person. According to the father, Robert is the tallest person of which medical science has any record. Even the giants in the circus are all under 1.5 feet of his size, Wadlow said, and it has been learned there is not another man in the United States who is quite 8 feet tall leave alone the extra foot and a half which makes Robert Wadlow the giant of all giants. Not quite a year after his visit here in Vincennes, Robert Wadlow died. Robert Wadlow, known as the world's tallest man, died July 15, 1940. Robert Wadlow, the 22-year-old Alton, Illinois giant who was 8 feet 9.5 inches tall and was believed the world's tallest man, died today from complications following a foot infection. Wadlow, who was making professional appearances as the world's tallest man at the National Forest Festival, suffered an infection to his left ankle. The youthful giant's condition grew steadily worse, and physicians gave him a blood transfusion and performed a minor operation on his foot. His temperature was reported as never lower than 106. Under the management of his father, Harold F. Wadlow, the young man was sponsored on his appearance by a shoe company. Young Wadlow's father said prior to his departure for Alton that following funeral services, the body would be buried at Oakwood Cemetery in Alton. The family, he said, would consider no suggestion that the body be given to science. If the special casket ordered is available tonight, the body will be transferred there immediately. A child of normal size at birth, Wadlow weighed 491 pounds while making his last public appearance. Medical men said his great height resulted from overactivity of the pituitary gland. Wadlow suffered his injury July 4th of 1940. A brace worn on his ankle chafed, an infection set in. He was confined to his hotel rather than a hospital. His condition had become very grave, and he was taking nourishment through a tube. Father, mother, 2 sisters, and 2 brothers, all were of normal stature. Robert weighed 8.5 pounds at birth, February 22, 1918. By the time Robert reached young manhood, the elder Wadlow's shoulders came only to his son's hips. Scientists classified him as acromegalic type, designating a person whose growth has been abnormal because of overactivity of the pituitary, lying on the base of the brain. Until young Wadlow began traveling for a shoe company, his daily life was like that of an ordinary or any other boy his age. He took part in boyhood games. He ran a soda pop stand in his front yard. He swam. In his studies, he was above average. After graduating from the Alton, Illinois High School, he attended Chertiff College. Wadlow, the tallest human being in medical history, was happiest when traveling. His huge size was a little handicapped in his tours, which had extended over most sections of his country. "I like to see everything," the bespectacled reserved youth once said. While he weighed 30 pounds, when 6 months old, his unusual growth was not observed until he was a year old. At 18 months, he tipped the scales at 62 pounds. Wadlow spent his boyhood in Alton. Although he never participated in athletics in school, he played basketball frequently at the Alton YMCA. Swimming, however, was his favorite sport. He reached the height of 8 foot 4 inches when he graduated from high school in January of 1936. A good student, he was given a scholarship at Chertiff College and attended 1 year. He first was interested in law career. Wadlow was a member of the Alton Main Street Methodist Church and also was a member of the Alton Chapter Order of Demolay. His favorite dish was ice cream. Clothes always were one of the youthful giant's biggest problems. All were made to order. Even his pocket handkerchief and necktie, 9 yards of material, were required to make an ordinary suit for him. His shoes, size 39, cost $86 a pair. A special cap and gown were made for him when he graduated from high school. The gown measured 92 inches in length from a collar to hem, 51 inches around the chest, and 55 inches in sleeve length. The cap size was 8.5. His most serious previous illness was in 1935 when he spent 8 weeks in Barnes Hospital, St. Louis. With a foot infection, he was carried to the hospital on a stretcher lifted by 8 men. Wadlow's 21st birthday anniversary, when he became a man, was the occasion for a gala celebration. The Alton Demolay chapter gave him a party featured by an ox wheel-sized cake with 21 candles. The community welcomed him to citizenship. A short time later, he exercised his franchise by voting in the Alton municipal election. While judges, clerks, and the crowd looked on, Wadlow squeezed into an ordinary-sized booth, held his ballot against the ceiling, and marked it. He visited